The cold had stopped hurting 20 minutes ago, and that terrified Gabrielle Johnson more than anything else that had happened today. She sat motionless in her wheelchair, the white lace of her wedding dress now gray with slush and ice. The veil that had taken her cousin 3 hours to arrange hung limp and frozen against her face. Her fingers, still clutching the bouquet of silk roses, had gone from painful to numb to completely unfeeling. She could no longer tell if she was still holding the flowers or if they had fallen into the snow gathering around her wheels. The country road stretched empty in both directions, a white tunnel through bare trees that looked like skeletal fingers reaching toward a dark gray sky. No cars had passed in over an hour. The wedding venue, that beautiful barn Kevin had chosen, sat 3 miles behind her. 3 miles she had traveled in her wheelchair before her arms gave out and the storm grew too strong. She should have stayed inside. She should have called someone. But pride and shock had driven her forward, away from the pitying stares and whispered gossip. Away from the decorated arch where she had waited, bouquet trembling in her lap, while the guests slowly realized no groom was coming. Away from the moment when Kevin's best man had finally checked his phone and announced that Kevin was gone. Just gone. The snow fell heavier now, fat flakes that clung to her eyelashes and made it hard to keep her eyes open. Gabrielle let her head drop forward. The cold crept past her skin, past her muscles, settling deep into her bones. She thought about her mother who had died 3 years ago. About how disappointed she would be to see her daughter giving up. But Gabrielle was so tired. So cold. So completely empty of everything except the desire to sleep. A sound broke through the silence. An engine. Gabrielle tried to lift her head but couldn't. Tried to call out but her voice came as barely a whisper. The sound grew closer then stopped. A car door opened. Dear God. A man's voice, deep and shocked. Footsteps crunching through snow, running. Mississippi Miss, can you hear me? Warm hands touched her face, tilting her head up. Gabrielle forced her eyes open. Through the falling snow she saw a face. A man in his late 40s, dark hair silvered at the temples, deep brown eyes wide with concern. He wore an expensive wool coat and leather gloves, but the snow had already soaked into his shoulders during the seconds he'd been kneeling beside her. We need to get you warm. Right now. He didn't wait for permission. He shrugged out of his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then began pushing her wheelchair toward a black luxury sedan idling on the road. A large German shepherd barked from the back seat, pressing his nose against the window. Wait, Gabrielle managed to whisper. I don't know you. Harrison Cole, he said, not slowing down. And right now that doesn't matter. You're going to die out here if we don't get you inside and warm. Something about his voice cut through her fog. Something certain and safe. Gabrielle nodded slightly. Harrison worked quickly, opening the passenger door and carefully lifting her from the wheelchair. She was too weak to protest, too cold to care about modesty or propriety as he settled her into the heated car seat. He folded the wheelchair with practiced ease and loaded it into the trunk, then jumped into the driver's seat and cranked the heat to maximum. The German shepherd immediately pushed his large head between the seats, sniffing Gabrielle with concern. His warm breath against her frozen cheek felt like a miracle. That's Duke, Harrison said, pulling back onto the road and driving fast but controlled. He's friendly. Duke gentle. The dog whined and carefully licked Gabrielle's hand. The small touch of warmth made her gasp. Pain flooded back into her fingers, sharp and terrible and wonderful because it meant she could still feel. There's a blanket behind my seat, Harrison said. Duke, get the blanket. The dog immediately understood, pulling a thick wool blanket forward with his teeth. Harrison took it with one hand, keeping his eyes on the road, and spread it over Gabrielle's lap and chest. My house is 10 minutes away, he continued. I have a doctor on call. You're going to be fine. Do you understand? You're going to be fine. Gabrielle wanted to ask why he was helping her. Wanted to know why he sounded so certain, so commanding, like the universe had to obey his words. But the warmth was making her drowsy, and Duke's steady presence beside her felt like protection. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me yet, Harrison said, and there was something in his voice that made Gabrielle look at him more carefully. Despite his expensive car and obvious wealth, his eyes held a deep loneliness that matched her own. Just stay awake. Talk to me. What's your name? Gabrielle. Gabrielle Johnson. Nice to meet you, Gabrielle. Now tell me why you're wearing a wedding dress in the middle of a snowstorm. The question should have hurt. Should have brought all the shame and rejection flooding back. But something about Harrison's matter-of-fact tone made it easier to speak. The groom didn't show up, she said simply. I'm in a wheelchair. He didn't know until today. He left. Harrison's hands tightened on the steering wheel, his jaw clenching. Then he's a fool. Maybe, Gabrielle said. But right now I'm grateful. Grateful? Harrison glanced at her, confused. If he had stayed, I would have married him, Gabrielle said. I would have married someone who couldn't accept me as I am. This pain will heal. That mistake would have lasted a lifetime. Harrison stared at her for a long moment before turning his attention back to the road. You're either the wisest woman I've ever met or in severe shock. Maybe both, Gabrielle said, and felt a small smile touch her frozen lips. Duke barked his agreement, making them both smile wider. The car turned onto a long private drive lined with snow-covered trees. At the end, a massive stone mansion rose from the white landscape, warm lights glowing in the windows. Gabrielle had never seen anything so beautiful. Welcome to Cole Manor, Harrison said, pulling up to the front entrance. For as long as you need it, consider this home. Gabrielle looked at this stranger who had appeared exactly when she needed him most, who had stopped without hesitation, who was offering shelter without asking for anything in return. She thought about the series of unlikely events that had led her to this exact spot on this exact road at this exact moment. This wasn't coincidence. This was something greater. I accept, she said. And thank you. As Harrison carried her into the warm house, Duke trotting protectively beside them, Gabrielle felt the first stirring of hope she'd experienced in hours. Her wedding day had been destroyed. Her heart had been broken. Her dreams had shattered in the snow. But maybe, just maybe, something better was beginning. Have you ever wondered if the worst moment of your life was actually a divine rescue? Could rejection be the protection you didn't know you needed? Drop a comment below with your thoughts and please subscribe to hear how this story unfolds. You won't believe what happens next. The first thing Gabrielle noticed about Cole Manor was the silence. Not the empty, echoing silence of loneliness, but the deep, cushioned quiet of a house too large for its single occupant. Harrison carried her through a grand foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier, but her attention fixed on the details that revealed the truth about this place. Fresh flowers stood in vases, professionally arranged but unappreciated. Expensive art hung on walls that no one stopped to admire. Everything was maintained perfectly, yet nothing felt lived in. Harrison took her directly to a ground-floor guest room, clearly chosen because Gabrielle wouldn't need to manage stairs. He settled her carefully on the bed, Duke immediately jumping up beside her despite what were probably strict rules about furniture. Duke, down, Harrison said, but without much conviction. He's fine, Gabrielle said, her voice stronger now that warmth was returning to her body. He's helping. And he was. The dog's solid presence against her side radiated heat and comfort. His brown eyes watched her intently as if assessing her condition himself. I'll call Dr. Ellis, Harrison said, already pulling out his phone. She'll be here in 15 minutes. In the meantime, there's a bathroom through that door. Do you need help or? I can manage, Gabrielle said. If you could bring my wheelchair in? Harrison retrieved it immediately, setting it beside the bed. He turned his back while Gabrielle transferred from the bed, giving her privacy without making it awkward. Such small kindness, but it meant everything. Gabrielle wheeled into the bathroom and caught her first glimpse of herself in the mirror. She looked like a ghost bride from a horror movie. Her dark skin had an ashen undertone from the cold. The wedding makeup her cousin had applied had run in streaks down her face. Her hair, which had been styled in elegant braids with small white flowers woven through, now hung damp and bedraggled. She found towels in a cabinet and began cleaning her face with warm water. Each swipe of the cloth revealed more of her true self beneath the ruined wedding mask. It felt symbolic somehow. Washing away the fantasy of who she tried to be for Kevin, revealing who she actually was. 26 years old. Paralyzed from the waist down since a car accident at 19. Independent, educated, and until today hopeful about love. She had met Kevin online, their connection built on late-night conversations and shared dreams. He'd said all the right things about acceptance and seeing past physical limitations. He'd proposed via video call, promising that nothing could keep them apart. She should have told him about the wheelchair earlier. She knew that now. But she'd been afraid. Afraid of being rejected before he knew her heart. Afraid of being reduced to her disability before he understood her strength. Turned out, those fears were justified. A knock at the bedroom door pulled her from her thoughts. Gabrielle emerged from the bathroom to find Harrison accompanied by a woman in her 50s carrying a medical bag. This is Dr. Andrea Ellis, Harrison said. She's been my family physician for 20 years. Dr. Ellis approached with a warm smile, her gray eyes kind behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Hello, Gabrielle. I understand you've had quite an ordeal. Let's make sure you're all right." The examination was thorough but gentle. Dr. Ellis checked Gabrielle's temperature, blood pressure, and heart rate. She examined her fingers and toes for frostbite, tested her reflexes, and asked detailed questions about pain and sensation. "You're very lucky," Dr. Ellis finally said. "Mild hypothermia but nothing permanent. Your fingers and toes will be sore for a few days as circulation fully returns, but I see no tissue damage. You need rest, warm liquids, and monitoring for the next 24 hours. No hot showers or baths yet. Your body needs to warm gradually." "I'll make sure she follows your instructions," Harrison said from where he'd been standing near the window, giving them space. Dr. Ellis packed her supplies and handed Gabrielle a bottle of vitamins. "Take 2 of these tonight and 2 in the morning. They'll help your body recover. If you experience any dizziness, confusion, or severe pain, call me immediately. My number is programmed into the house phone." She glanced at Harrison. "Keep her warm and comfortable. Light foods, nothing heavy. And Harrison? Make sure she actually rests. No playing hostess or trying to be helpful." Gabrielle felt her cheeks warm. "I wouldn't." "Yes, you would," Dr. Ellis said, not unkindly. "I can see it in your eyes. You're already thinking about how to thank Harrison, how to repay this kindness. Stop. Your job right now is to heal. That's how you thank him." After Dr. Ellis left, Harrison cleared his throat. "She's right, you know. You don't owe me anything. But you must be hungry. What sounds good?" Gabrielle's stomach answered before she could, rumbling loudly. She'd been too nervous to eat before the wedding, and that felt like days ago now. "Anything warm," she said honestly. Harrison nodded and left. Duke remained, his large head resting on the bed beside Gabrielle's wheelchair. She stroked his soft fur, grateful for his quiet companionship. Alone for the first time since Harrison found her, Gabrielle let herself process everything. This morning she'd been preparing to marry a man she thought loved her. Tonight, she was in a stranger's mansion, saved from freezing to death, being cared for with no expectation of repayment. The shift was too extreme to fully comprehend. But instead of fear or confusion, Gabrielle felt an overwhelming sense of peace. This was meant to be. She didn't understand how or why, but every instinct in her body said she was exactly where she needed to be. Harrison returned pushing a cart laden with soup, fresh bread, hot tea, and apple slices. The soup was homemade chicken and vegetables, the kind that healed more than just the body. "Did you make this?" Gabrielle asked, surprised. "Mrs. Patterson, my housekeeper, keeps the kitchen stocked," Harrison said. "She comes 3 days a week. I just heated it up." He helped arrange everything within Gabrielle's reach, then sat in an armchair across from the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. Duke divided his attention between them, clearly pleased to have multiple humans to supervise. "Tell me about him," Harrison said suddenly. "The man who left you." Gabrielle considered deflecting, but something about Harrison's direct manner invited honesty. As she ate, she told him about Kevin. About their online courtship, his promises, their plans. About how she'd convinced herself that waiting to reveal her disability in person was just waiting for the right moment, not cowardice. "I thought if he loved me first, the wheelchair wouldn't matter," she admitted. "I thought love could overcome anything." "Love can," Harrison said. "But he didn't love you. He loved an image. You can't overcome an image. It's not real." The words should have hurt, but they were true. Gabrielle nodded slowly. "Have you called your family?" Harrison asked. "They must be worried." Gabrielle's chest tightened. "My mother passed away 3 years ago. My father wasn't in the picture. I have a cousin, Bridget, who helped with wedding planning. But she thought I was going on my honeymoon tonight. She doesn't know what happened yet." "You should call her," Harrison said gently. "Tomorrow. Tonight you rest." Gabrielle agreed. The exhaustion was catching up to her now that her body was warm and fed. Harrison stood, collecting the dishes. "There are clothes in the dresser. All new, various sizes. Mrs. Patterson keeps them for guests. Find something comfortable. The bathroom has everything you might need. If you require anything else, there's an intercom button beside the bed. Press it and I'll hear you anywhere in the house." "Where will you be?" Gabrielle asked. "My study is directly above this room," Harrison said. "I have work to catch up on. But I'm here if you need me." He moved toward the door, Duke reluctantly following. At the threshold, Harrison paused. "Gabrielle? I know today was terrible. I know you're hurting. But Dr. Ellis was right about something. You're a helper. I can see it. And people like us, We struggle to receive care without earning it first. He met her eyes. You've already earned it. By surviving. By trusting a stranger. By accepting help when you needed it most. That's enough. More than enough. Before Gabrielle could respond, he closed the door softly behind him. She sat alone in the beautiful room in this stranger's house, wearing the ruins of a wedding dress, and felt the tears finally come. Not tears of despair but of release. Of gratitude. Of recognition that something greater than herself was at work. She'd been abandoned in the snow. But she'd been found by exactly the right person at exactly the right time. That wasn't coincidence. That was grace. Morning arrived with pale winter sunlight streaming through frost-covered windows. Gabrielle woke slowly, disoriented by the unfamiliar room until yesterday's events rushed back. She sat up carefully, assessing her body. Her fingers and toes ached with a deep, bone-level soreness, but the numbness was gone. Everything worked. She was alive. The clothes Harrison mentioned filled 3 dresser drawers. Gabrielle selected a soft green sweater and comfortable black pants, both fitting reasonably well. She took her time in the bathroom, washing away the last remnants of her wedding preparation. Her braids were salvageable once she removed the wilted flowers and restyled them into a simple pattern. The face that looked back from the mirror appeared younger without makeup. More vulnerable. More honest. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Gabrielle? A woman's voice, older and warm. I'm Mrs. Patterson. Mr. Cole asked me to check on you. May I come in? Please, Gabrielle called, wheeling out of the bathroom. The woman who entered was short and round, with silver hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore a practical blue dress and carried a breakfast tray that smelled like heaven. Oh, good, you're dressed, Mrs. Patterson said, setting the tray on a table by the window. Mr. Cole was worried you'd still be sleeping, but I told him a young woman would wake early after such a night. The body wants to be sure it's still working properly. Gabrielle smiled at the practical assessment. You're exactly right. Mrs. Patterson poured tea from a china pot, her movements efficient. I've been keeping house for Mr. Cole for 15 years. I've seen him bring home stray cats, injured birds, and once a 3-legged fox. But never a bride in a snowstorm. You've got him quite concerned. I'm sorry to be trouble, Gabrielle started, but Mrs. Patterson waved her off. Nonsense. This house needs trouble. It's been too quiet for too long. She studied Gabrielle with sharp eyes. You seem like a sensible girl. Are you? The direct question surprised a laugh from Gabrielle. I try to be. Good. Then we'll get along fine. Eat your breakfast. Mr. Cole is in his study working, but he said to let him know when you're ready to talk. After Mrs. Patterson left, Gabrielle ate slowly, thinking about what to say. The full story felt too raw, too humiliating to share. But Harrison had saved her life. He deserved the truth. An hour later, showered and dressed and as prepared as she'd ever be, Gabrielle pressed the intercom button. Harrison's voice came through immediately. Good morning. How are you feeling? Better. Could we talk? I'll be right there. Harrison appeared within minutes, dressed casually in jeans and a burgundy sweater that made him look younger and more approachable than the businessman from yesterday. Duke trotted beside him, immediately coming to greet Gabrielle with a wagging tail. He slept outside your door all night, Harrison said. Refused to leave. I finally gave up and brought him a blanket. Gabrielle scratched behind Duke's ears, touched by the loyalty. Thank you for watching over me. Harrison settled into the same armchair from last night. You wanted to talk? Gabrielle took a breath and told him everything. Not the sanitized version but the real story. How she'd been in a car accident 7 years ago that left her paralyzed. How she'd worked hard to build an independent life, getting her degree online, finding remote work as a graphic designer. How lonely it had been, how dating felt impossible when so many people saw the wheelchair before they saw her. Then Kevin entered her life through an online support forum. He was charming, attentive, and claimed his own disability gave him unique understanding. They talked for months before he asked her out. She'd been so happy, so relieved to find someone who got it. But he didn't have a disability, Gabrielle said quietly. That was the first lie. He joined the forum looking for vulnerable women. I learned that later. Everything he told me was designed to make me trust him. Harrison's expression darkened but he remained silent, letting her continue. Kevin proposed after 6 months. A quick engagement, he'd said, because when you know, you know. Gabrielle agreed, swept up in the romance of it all. He suggested they meet in person for the first time at the wedding. A dramatic romantic gesture, he called it. She thought it was unusual but touching. He asked me to handle all the planning, Gabrielle continued. Said he wanted to be surprised. He transferred me money for expenses. $10,000. I thought he was being generous. Her hands tightened in her lap. The wedding was yesterday at a barn venue 2 hours from my apartment. Kevin had insisted on the location, said it was special to him. I arrived early with my cousin Bridget. The guests started coming. Kevin's family and friends, he'd said. Except none of them knew him. They'd all been hired. Harrison leaned forward, his attention absolute. Hired? Actors, Gabrielle said. Paid to pretend to be wedding guests. I didn't realize until later. At the time, I just thought they were oddly formal. She swallowed hard. When it was time for the ceremony, I waited at the altar. And waited. Then Kevin's supposed best man got a text. He read it out loud. Sorry, can't go through with it. Didn't know about the wheelchair. This won't work. The memory made her voice shake, but she pushed through. The actors left immediately. They'd been paid for 2 hours and their time was up. My cousin was furious and hurt on my behalf. She wanted to call the police, file a report. But I was so humiliated. I just wanted to leave. Where was your cousin when you ended up on that road? Harrison asked. She went to get her car from the parking area. It was across a field. I told her I'd wait inside. Gabrielle shook her head at her own foolishness. But I couldn't stand being in that barn. Everyone was staring. The venue owners were whispering. So I left. I just started wheeling down the road, not really thinking. Then the storm got worse and I couldn't make it back. Harrison stood and paced to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. Did this Kevin take more than the wedding money? I don't know, Gabrielle admitted. I gave him access to my savings account. He said it would make planning easier. There was $12,000 in there. I haven't checked since yesterday. Check now, Harrison said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Gabrielle pulled out her phone, which Harrison had plugged in to charge overnight. She logged into her banking app. Her stomach dropped. It's gone. All of it. And there are charges I didn't make. He bought things. Expensive things. Harrison turned back to her. We're calling the police. This is fraud. Identity theft. Whatever else they can charge him with. I don't even know his real name, Gabrielle said. Kevin Martinez is probably fake. They can track him. IP addresses, phone records, bank transfers. Let them do their job. Gabrielle wanted to argue. Wanted to say it wasn't worth the trouble, that she just wanted to forget. But she thought about Dr. Ellis's words. About letting herself be helped. About accepting the kindness she deserved. Okay, she said. I'll file a report. Harrison nodded approvingly. He sat back down, his anger settling into something more like determination. Until this is sorted, you stay here. I have extra rooms, more space than any one person needs. Stay as long as necessary. That could be weeks, Gabrielle protested. I can't impose. You're not imposing. You're accepting help. There's a difference. Harrison leaned forward. Gabrielle, I don't know why I took that particular road yesterday. I never drive that route. I'd had a terrible meeting in town and wanted to avoid traffic, so I took the scenic way home. If I'd left 5 minutes earlier or later, if I'd chosen any other road, I wouldn't have found you. Divine timing, Gabrielle said softly. Maybe. Probably. Harrison's expression grew serious. My wife died 5 years ago. Cancer. Since then this house has been a mausoleum. I work, I sleep, I exist. Yesterday bringing you here, helping you, it's the first time in years I felt like I had a purpose beyond making money. Gabrielle understood. You saved my life. But maybe I'm supposed to help you too. Maybe, Harrison agreed. So stay. Help me figure out what that means. Duke barked his agreement, making them both smile. On one condition, Gabrielle said. I contribute. I can work remotely. I pay rent. Absolutely not. Then I help around the house. I earn my keep somehow. Harrison studied her, seeing the pride that needed this compromise. Mrs. Patterson has been asking for help organizing my late wife's things. It's time, but I can't do it alone. Too many memories. If you could help with that, I'd be grateful. It was a job that needed doing but clearly invented for her benefit. Gabrielle recognized the kindness and accepted it anyway. Deal. They shook hands, a formal agreement for an informal arrangement. As Harrison left to make calls about filing a police report, Gabrielle sat in the sunny room and marveled at how wrong her life had gone and how right it felt anyway. She'd been abandoned by a cruel man. But she'd been found by a kind one. The exchange felt impossibly fair. 3 days passed in a comfortable routine. Gabrielle recovered fully, her strength returning as the soreness faded from her extremities. She filed a detailed police report with a detective who took the case seriously. The officer assured her they'd track Kevin down. Financial fraud left trails that were hard to erase. In the meantime, Gabrielle settled into life at Cole Manor. The house was enormous, with 12 bedrooms, a library, a music room, and a greenhouse that had been neglected for years. Harrison had inherited it from his grandparents, he explained, and never had the heart to sell despite its size being absurd for one person. Mrs. Patterson came Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, cooking meals that stocked the refrigerator and maintaining the house's pristine condition. She treated Gabrielle with brisk kindness, clearly pleased to have another woman around. "It's too quiet here," she told Gabrielle one morning while they worked together in the kitchen. "Mr. Cole rattles around like a ghost. He needs people. Family. But after Miss Rachel died..." She trailed off, shaking her head. Gabrielle learned bits about Harrison through these conversations and through observation. He woke early and worked in his study until noon. After lunch he walked Duke for an hour regardless of weather. Evenings he read in the library or returned to work. He was disciplined, isolated, and clearly avoiding something. On her fourth day there, Gabrielle was wheeling through the house when she heard Harrison's raised voice from the study. The door was ajar. "The board wants answers I don't have, Thomas," Harrison said into his phone, frustration evident. "Revenue is down 18% this quarter. We're losing contracts to cheaper competitors. I don't know how to." Gabrielle wheeled past, not wanting to eavesdrop. But she'd heard enough to understand that Harrison's business, whatever it was struggling. Later, when he was walking Duke, she noticed stacks of financial documents on the study desk through the open door. Profit and loss statements. Market analysis reports. Strategic planning documents. She shouldn't look. It wasn't her business. But her degree was in business administration, minored in marketing. Before the accident, she'd planned to work in corporate consulting. That dream had died with her ability to walk, but the knowledge remained. One glance at the top document revealed the problem immediately. Cole Technologies, Harrison's company, manufactured high-end industrial sensors. Their products were excellent but expensive. The market had shifted toward cheaper imports, and Harrison was trying to compete on price. The numbers showed it wasn't working. That evening, Harrison seemed distracted during dinner. They'd fallen into the habit of eating together, both grateful for the company. Duke sat between them, accepting occasional treats from both sides. "Can I ask about your business?" Gabrielle said carefully. Harrison looked up, surprised. "What about it?" "I overheard you on the phone. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but you sounded stressed. And I saw some papers on your desk. I used to study business before." "Before your accident?" Harrison finished gently. "You can say it. I know your life didn't start in that wedding dress." Gabrielle smiled. "True. I had planned to be a consultant. I liked solving problems, finding patterns others missed." "What did you see on my desk?" Harrison asked, his tone more curious than defensive. "That you're trying to compete on price when you should be emphasizing quality and specialization." Gabrielle spoke carefully. "Your sensors are better than the imports. More accurate, more durable. But you're marketing them the same way like they're interchangeable." "They're not." Harrison set down his fork. "Our sales team says customers only care about cost." "Then your sales team is talking to the wrong customers," Gabrielle said. "The buyers choosing cheap imports aren't your market. You need customers who understand that paying more upfront saves money long-term through accuracy and longevity. Industries where precision matters more than budget. Medical equipment manufacturers. Aerospace companies. Scientific research facilities." Harrison stared at her. "That's exactly what my father used to say. Before he retired and I took over. He insisted on quality over quantity. I thought I was modernizing by expanding our customer base." "You were diluting your brand," Gabrielle said gently. "It's a common mistake. Growth feels good, but not all growth is healthy." Harrison stood abruptly and retrieved a laptop from the study. For the next 2 hours they went through his business strategy together. Gabrielle asked questions, Harrison provided data, and slowly a new picture emerged. Cole Technologies had loyal customers who loved their products and customers who constantly complained about price. The solution was obvious. Focus on the former, stop chasing the latter. Raise prices back to sustainable levels. Market aggressively to precision-focused industries. Let the bargain hunters go to competitors. "It means layoffs," Harrison said, troubled. "We've hired sales staff to chase those budget customers. If we shift focus, some positions become redundant." Keeping those positions means the whole company fails eventually, Gabrielle said. That's everyone's job. Hard decisions now prevent worse outcomes later. But you can offer generous severance. Help with job placement. Make it as gentle as possible. Harrison ran his hands through his hair. You figured this out in 3 days of living here? I saw one document and overheard one phone call, Gabrielle corrected. The rest is just logic. You already knew this, Harrison. You just needed permission to trust your instincts. He looked at her with something like wonder. You're remarkable. You know that. Gabrielle felt heat rise to her cheeks. I'm just good with patterns. Always have been. No, Harrison said seriously. You're good with people. With seeing what they need. Thomas, my CFO, has been telling me to cut costs for months. But he talks about numbers like they're just numbers. You talk about them like they're people's lives. That's the difference between a good consultant and a great one. The praise made Gabrielle uncomfortable in a pleasant way. She changed the subject. How's Duke been? He seems more energetic than when I arrived. Harrison glanced at the dog who was sprawled on the rug looking content. You noticed that too? He's like a puppy again. Follows you everywhere, plays with his toys. I thought he was just getting old, but... He was depressed, Gabrielle said. Dogs grieve just like people. When did your wife pass? 5 years ago in March. And Duke? He was her dog originally. Rachel got him as a puppy, trained him herself. Harrison's voice grew soft. After she died, he stopped eating for weeks. The vet couldn't find anything physically wrong. Eventually he recovered, but he's been subdued ever since. Gabrielle reached down to pet Duke's head. He needed something to focus on besides loss. Someone new to care for. It gave him purpose again. Harrison met her eyes. I think Duke and I have that in common. The moment stretched between them, warm and significant. Then Mrs. Patterson appeared with fresh coffee, breaking the spell. But something had shifted. Gabrielle felt it. Harrison did too. They were becoming more than host and guest. They were becoming friends. Maybe more. That night, lying in bed with Duke snoring softly on the floor beside her wheelchair, Gabrielle thought about divine timing again. Harrison needed business advice. She had business knowledge. Duke needed purpose. She needed a reason to feel useful. The fit was too perfect to be random. She didn't know where this was leading. But for the first time since the accident, Gabrielle felt like her life had direction again. Not the direction she planned, but maybe a better one. In the study above her, Harrison sat at his desk reviewing everything Gabrielle had suggested. Every point made sense. Every recommendation felt right. He'd been drowning in bad decisions for 2 years, watching his father's legacy crumble, and a woman he'd known for less than a week had handed him a lifeline. He looked at Duke's empty bed in the corner. The dog had chosen Gabrielle's room over his. Chosen her over him. Harrison didn't feel jealous. He felt grateful. Rachel had been gone for 5 years. He'd mourned her, honored her, and somehow forgotten to keep living. Maybe it was time to try again. Maybe it was time to let someone help him. The snowstorm that brought Gabrielle to Cole Manor had been early December's last gasp. Now, 2 weeks later, the grounds had transformed into a winter wonderland with clean white snow covering everything in pristine silence. Gabrielle had settled into a rhythm that felt surprisingly natural. She worked on her graphic design projects in the mornings, helped Mrs. Patterson with household tasks in the afternoons, and spent evenings with Harrison. Today they were tackling the project Harrison had mentioned, organizing Rachel's belongings. Mrs. Patterson had led them to a large storage room on the second floor, accessible by the house's elevator that Harrison admitted he'd installed for his late wife but rarely thought about since. Rachel developed mobility issues near the end, Harrison explained as they rode up together. The cancer spread to her spine. She couldn't manage stairs for the last 6 months. The storage room was organized chaos. Boxes labeled in neat handwriting, Rachel's books, Rachel's gardening supplies, Rachel's art projects. Each one represented a piece of a life that had ended too soon. Where do we start? Gabrielle asked gently. Harrison stood in the doorway looking overwhelmed. I don't know. I boxed everything 5 years ago and haven't opened a single one since. Then let's open them together, Gabrielle said. Tell me about her. They started with the books. Rachel had loved mysteries and historical fiction. As Harrison pulled out each volume, he shared memories. This one she'd read on their honeymoon. That one she'd laughed through during chemotherapy. These were her favorites, reread so many times the spines were cracked. She sounds wonderful, Gabrielle said. She was, Harrison said simply. We met at a charity gala. I was there representing my company, completely bored. Rachel was working the event, coordinating volunteers. She marched up to me and said, "You have the look of a man who needs something useful to do. Put me to work serving food for 3 hours." By the end of the night, I was in love. Gabrielle smiled at the image. "She saw through your wealthy businessman act?" "Completely." Rachel didn't care about money or status. She cared about character. Harrison set down a book carefully. That's why losing her felt like losing my compass. She kept me grounded, reminded me what mattered. Without her, I threw myself into work and forgot everything else. "Is that when things started going wrong with your children?" Gabrielle asked. Harrison nodded slowly. Violet was 18 when Rachel died, just starting college. Preston was 16. They both needed me and I disappeared into work instead. I told myself I was providing for them, securing their future. But really, I was hiding from grief. "What are they like? Your children?" "Violet is fierce and brilliant. Got her mother's compassion and my stubbornness. She's a social worker now, helping families in crisis. Preston is quieter, more thoughtful. He's in medical school, wants to be an oncologist." Harrison's voice cracked slightly. "He wants to save people from what happened to his mother." "They sound incredible," Gabrielle said. "They are. And I've missed 3 years of their lives because I was too proud to admit I was falling apart." Harrison sat heavily on a storage box. "Violet tried reaching out after the funeral. She called every week for 6 months. I was always too busy to talk properly. Eventually she stopped calling. Preston wrote me letters. Long ones about school and his feelings and his grief. I read them but never wrote back. I didn't know what to say." Gabrielle wheeled closer. "It's not too late, Harrison. People are more forgiving than we think. Especially family." "How can you believe that?" Harrison asked. "After what Kevin did to you, how can you still have faith in people?" "Because one man's cruelty doesn't erase everyone else's kindness," Gabrielle said. "You saved my life. Mrs. Patterson has welcomed me without question. Duke loves me even though we just met. The world has more good people than bad ones. We just notice the bad ones more because they hurt us." Harrison studied her face. "You really believe that?" "I have to," Gabrielle said. "The alternative is giving up on everyone. That's not living. That's just existing in fear." They continued working through Rachel's belongings. Some things would go to charity, Harrison decided. Others he wanted to keep. A few special items he'd offer to Violet and Preston if they ever spoke again. "I think you should call them," Gabrielle said as they sorted through Rachel's jewelry. "Today. Now." "And say what?" Harrison asked. "Sorry I've been a terrible father for 3 years?" "Yes," Gabrielle said. "Exactly that. Apologies don't have to be complicated. They just have to be honest." Harrison picked up Rachel's wedding ring, which he'd saved in a small velvet box. "She would have liked you," he said quietly. "Rachel had this way of seeing the best in people, helping them see it in themselves. You have that same gift. Then honor her memory by using it," Gabrielle said. "Call your children. Let them see that you're trying to be better. That's all anyone can ask." That evening after dinner, Harrison retreated to his study. Gabrielle gave him privacy, spending time in the library with Duke. She tried to read but found herself listening for sounds from upstairs, hoping Harrison had taken her advice. An hour later, Harrison appeared in the library doorway. His eyes were red, but his expression held something Gabrielle hadn't seen before: hope. "I called Violet," he said. "We talked for an hour. She cried. I cried. It was..." He shook his head, overwhelmed. "Good?" Gabrielle prompted. "Amazing. Painful. Healing." Harrison sat beside her. "She's been waiting for me to reach out. Said she'd almost given up but something told her to keep her phone nearby today. We're having dinner next weekend. Here. She wants to meet you." "Me?" Gabrielle was surprised. "I told her about finding you. About how you've helped me see clearly again," she said. Harrison smiled slightly. "She said it sounded like Mom sent you." Gabrielle felt tears prick her own eyes. "I'd love to meet her. I called Preston too. Got his voicemail. But I left a long message. Apologized for everything. Told him I was proud of him. Asked if we could talk." Harrison took a shaky breath. "I don't know if he'll call back, but at least I tried." "He'll call," Gabrielle said with certainty. "He wrote you letters for a reason. He wants his father back." They sat together in comfortable silence, Duke sprawled across both their feet. Outside, snow began falling again, soft and gentle. The library felt warm and safe, a bubble of peace in a complicated world. "Can I ask you something?" Harrison said after a while. "Anything. Why aren't you angry? About Kevin, about the accident, about any of it?" "You have every right to be furious at the world." Gabrielle considered the question. "I was angry. For a long time after the accident. Angry at the drunk driver who hit us, angry at God for letting it happen, angry at my own body for betraying me. The anger was eating me alive." "What changed?" Harrison asked. "My mother," Gabrielle said. "She sat with me one night while I was raging about everything I'd lost. When I finally ran out of words, she said, 'Anger is a room you can visit but you can't live there. It has no windows and no doors. Stay too long and you forget there's a world outside.' She was right. I had to choose to leave that room." "That's profound," Harrison said. "She was a wise woman. I miss her every day." Gabrielle smiled at the memory. She would have loved this house. The library especially. She always said books were windows when walls felt too close. Harrison reached over and squeezed her hand gently. The touch was brief but significant. "Thank you," he said. "For everything. For the business advice, for encouraging me to call Violet, for being here. For being you." Gabrielle squeezed back. "Thank you for finding me in the snow. For not driving past. For opening your home." "Divine timing," Harrison said, echoing her words from days before. "Divine timing," Gabrielle agreed. As they sat together, hands linked, both felt the truth of it. They'd been brought together for a reason. Two broken people learning to heal. Two lost souls finding direction. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, neither felt alone. Upstairs in his study, Harrison's phone buzzed. A text from Preston. "Got your message. Want to talk? Call me tomorrow?" Harrison showed Gabrielle the message, his face transformed by joy. She hugged him impulsively, feeling his arms wrap around her in return. The embrace lasted longer than necessary, neither wanting to let go. When they finally pulled apart, both were aware that something had shifted again. The line between gratitude and affection, between friendship and something deeper, was blurring. Neither mentioned it. Not yet. But both felt it. And both wondered where this unexpected journey would lead. The week leading to Violet's visit passed in a flurry of nervous preparation. Harrison had Mrs. Patterson prepare Rachel's favorite recipes. He arranged fresh flowers in every room. He cleaned his study twice, though it was already spotless. Gabrielle watched his anxiety with understanding, helping where she could and offering reassurance when he doubted himself. "What if she still hates me?" Harrison asked the night before Violet's arrival. They were in the library again, their usual evening spot. Duke had claimed his position between them, his head on Gabrielle's lap. "She doesn't hate you," Gabrielle said firmly. "Hurt and hate are different things. Hurt can heal." "You sound very certain." "I am." "She agreed to come, didn't she?" "That's not the action of someone who hates you. That's someone who's been hoping for reconciliation." Harrison nodded, trying to internalize the reassurance. His conversation with Preston the previous day had gone well, another hour of tears and apologies and tentative rebuilding. Preston would visit during his spring break, 2 months away. It felt like forever and also too soon. Saturday arrived cold and bright. Gabrielle had debated whether to make herself scarce, give Harrison and Violet privacy. But Harrison had been adamant that she stay. "Violet wants to meet you," he'd said. "And honestly, I need you there. You're better at emotional conversations than I am." So Gabrielle waited with Harrison in the living room, both jumping slightly at every sound. Duke, sensing the tension, paced between them nervously. When the doorbell finally rang at 2 o'clock precisely, Harrison stood so quickly he nearly knocked over his coffee. Gabrielle squeezed his hand. "Breathe. It's going to be fine." Harrison opened the door to reveal a young woman in her early 20s with long dark hair and her father's brown eyes. She wore a bright red coat and jeans, her expression a mixture of hope and caution. For a moment, father and daughter just stared at each other. Then Violet said, "Hi, Dad," and Harrison pulled her into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry," Harrison said, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "I'm so sorry for all of it." "I know," Violet said, tears streaming down her face. "I know. I'm sorry too. For giving up on calling, for—" "No," Harrison pulled back to look at her. "You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. This was all my failure, my absence. You did everything right." They stood in the doorway crying and holding each other until Violet laughed through her tears. "Can we maybe do this inside? It's freezing." Harrison ushered her in, suddenly remembering his manners. "Yes, of course. Come in." Let me take your coat. There's someone I want you to meet. Violet entered the living room and spotted Gabrielle. Her expression shifted to curiosity. You must be Gabrielle. Dad told me about you. About how he found you. Gabrielle wheeled forward, offering her hand. It's wonderful to meet you. Your father has told me so much about you. Violet shook her hand warmly, then surprised Gabrielle by leaning down to hug her. Thank you, she whispered. For helping him. For being here. I haven't done anything special, Gabrielle said. Yes, you have, Violet said firmly. She straightened and looked around the living room. Wow. I haven't been here since the funeral. It looks different. Lighter somehow. Your father has been making changes, Gabrielle said. Opening windows, letting life back in. They moved to the dining room where Mrs. Patterson had prepared a feast. As they ate, conversation flowed more naturally than any of them had expected. Violet shared stories about her work as a social worker, the challenges and victories of helping families in crisis. Harrison listened with genuine interest, asking questions, engaging fully in a way he admitted he hadn't done in years. I used to feel like I was talking at you, not with you, Violet said at one point, not accusingly but honestly. Like you were physically present but mentally somewhere else. I was, Harrison admitted. Lost in work, in grief, in my own inability to process everything. It wasn't fair to you or Preston. How is Preston? Violet asked. Have you talked to him? Harrison brightened. Yes. Several times this week. Long conversations. He's doing well in school. Still wants to specialize in oncology. Violet's eyes filled with tears again. Mom would be so proud of him. She'd be proud of both of you, Harrison said. You're both living the values she taught. Compassion, service, caring for others. I lost sight of those things. You didn't. After dinner they moved to the library. Gabrielle started to excuse herself, but Violet asked her to stay. Please. I feel like you're part of this somehow. Part of whatever's healing here. So Gabrielle remained while Harrison showed Violet the boxes from Rachel's room. They went through jewelry together, Violet claiming a few special pieces. A necklace Rachel always wore. Earrings from her wedding day. A bracelet Preston had given her for Mother's Day. I want Preston to have Mom's wedding ring, Violet said. For when he proposes someday. If that's okay. That's perfect, Harrison said. Rachel would love that. They looked through photo albums, Harrison sharing stories about the images. Rachel at their wedding, laughing with her head thrown back. Rachel pregnant with Violet, glowing and beautiful. Rachel with both children, her arms around them, her face radiating love. She was so happy, Violet said softly. Even at the end, even in pain, she found things to be grateful for. She had a gift for that, Harrison agreed. For seeing light even in darkness. Gabrielle listened, feeling privileged to witness this intimacy. She saw so clearly where Harrison's loneliness came from, this gaping hole where his partner had been. But she also saw him healing in real time, reconnecting with his daughter, rediscovering the parts of himself he'd buried. As evening approached, Violet prepared to leave. She hugged her father tightly at the door. Can we do this again? Regularly? Every week if you want, Harrison said. You're always welcome here. This is your home. Our home, Violet corrected gently. Yours, mine, Preston's. We're family. That doesn't change just because Mom's gone. After Violet left, Harrison stood in the foyer looking dazed and happy. Gabrielle wheeled up beside him. That went well. That went perfectly, Harrison said. Thanks to you. The way you put her at ease, asked the right questions, knew when to speak and when to listen. You have a real gift. I just cared about both of you being happy, Gabrielle said simply. Harrison looked down at her, his expression intense. You care about everyone being happy. It's who you are. And it's remarkable. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken feelings. Duke broke the tension by barking at a squirrel outside the window, making them both laugh. That night, Harrison called Preston to tell him about Violet's visit. Gabrielle heard the excitement in his voice through the ceiling, the joy of a man rediscovering his family. She felt happy for him, genuinely pleased that her presence had somehow catalyzed this healing. But she also felt the first stirring of uncertainty. Harrison was rebuilding his life, reconnecting with his children. Where did she fit in that picture? She'd been useful during a crisis, but crises ended. Once Harrison's life stabilized, would he still need her here? The thought troubled her more than she wanted to admit. Somewhere along the way, Cole Manor had stopped feeling like temporary shelter and started feeling like home. Harrison had stopped being a kind stranger and become someone deeply important to her. She was falling for him. She'd been falling for weeks, maybe since that first night when he'd wrapped her in his coat and promised everything would be fine. But Harrison was her rescuer, her benefactor. Any feelings he had for her might just be gratitude or obligation. Gabrielle pushed the thoughts away. She'd learned to live with uncertainty after the accident. She could handle it now. Whatever happened, she was grateful for this time. For this house, this man, this unexpected chapter in her life. If it had to end eventually, at least it had been beautiful while it lasted. Harrison spent the Monday following Violet's visit on the phone with his executive team. Gabrielle could hear his confident voice from the study, laying out the new strategic direction for Cole Technologies. It was the voice of a man who had rediscovered his purpose. Over breakfast, he'd asked Gabrielle to sit in on the morning meeting via video conference. "I want the team to hear your ideas directly," he'd said. "You explained it better than I could." So Gabrielle found herself on camera, facing a grid of skeptical executive faces. Harrison introduced her as a strategic consultant, which felt generous given that her consulting experience was theoretical rather than practical. But as she began explaining the concept of refocusing on premium markets, something shifted in the room. "You're competing against yourself," she told them. "Every time you discount prices to match imports, you tell customers your products aren't worth their original price. You train them to wait for sales, to question your value. Premium brands can't succeed with discount strategies." Thomas, the CFO Harrison had mentioned, leaned forward on his screen. "The market analysis says customers want lower prices." "The customers you're surveying want lower prices," Gabrielle corrected. "But they're not your ideal customers. Survey the companies that pay full price and never complain. Ask them why they choose you. I guarantee it's not because you're cheap. It's because you're reliable." She pulled up data Harrison had shared with her. "Look at your highest margin contracts. Medical equipment manufacturers, research facilities, aerospace suppliers. These clients reorder regularly, pay on time, and rarely negotiate. They value precision over cost because failure isn't an option. One faulty sensor in a dialysis machine or aircraft system could kill someone. They can't afford to save $500 on a component." The executives were listening now, really listening. Gabrielle continued. "My suggestion is to exit the low-margin markets entirely. Stop bidding on contracts where price is the primary factor. Take the savings from reduced sales overhead and invest in research and development. Make your sensors not just better but necessary. Develop features competitors can't match. File patents. Become irreplaceable in your niche." "That's long-term thinking," one executive said. "The board wants quarterly results." "The board wants a healthy company," Harrison interjected. "Short-term growth that kills us in 5 years isn't growth. It's suicide with extra steps." The meeting continued for 2 hours. By the end, Harrison had buy-in from his team. It would be painful in the short term. Layoffs were unavoidable. But everyone agreed it was better than the slow death they'd been experiencing. After the call ended, Harrison turned to Gabrielle with an expression of awe. "You were incredible. Thomas has been fighting me for 2 years. You convinced him in 20 minutes. "I had good data," Gabrielle demurred. "No," Harrison said. "You had clarity. You saw the problem, the solution, and the path between them. That's not common, Gabrielle. That's special." Over the following weeks, the transformation began. Cole Technologies announced its new focus. Some clients left immediately, exactly as predicted. But the clients who remained increased their orders. They'd been waiting for Cole to recommit to quality. Harrison's stress levels dropped visibly. He smiled more, laughed easier. His walks with Duke lasted longer, and he started taking weekends off for the first time in years. Violet visited every Saturday and Preston called twice weekly. The house felt alive again. Gabrielle watched it all with pride and growing uncertainty. She'd accomplished what she came to do, even if she hadn't known that was her purpose. Harrison's business was saved. His family was healing. Duke was happy and healthy. They didn't need her anymore. She needed to think about her own future. Finding her own place. Rebuilding her savings. Establishing independence again. The thought made her chest tight with something like panic, but she knew it was necessary. One evening in early January, she broached the subject. They were in the library as usual, Duke snoring between them. Outside, another snowstorm raged, but inside was warm and safe. "I've been thinking," Gabrielle started carefully. "Now that things are stable here, I should probably start looking for my own apartment. Give you your space back." Harrison looked up from his book, startled. "What? Why?" "Because I can't stay here forever," Gabrielle said gently. You've been incredibly generous, but this isn't my home. I need to build my own life. Harrison set his book aside. Do you want to leave? The direct question caught her off guard. It's not about wanting. Do you want to leave? Harrison repeated, his eyes intense on hers. No, Gabrielle admitted. But that's not the point. That's exactly the point, Harrison said. He moved from his chair to sit beside her on the couch. Duke lifted his head briefly, then settled back to sleep. Gabrielle, do you know what these past weeks have meant to me? Not just the business advice, though that's been invaluable. But the conversation, the companionship, the feeling that someone actually sees me as more than a bank account or a boss or a problem to manage. You have Violet and Preston now, Gabrielle said. You don't need. I need you, Harrison said simply. Not as a consultant or a housekeeper or someone to manage my life. I need you as you. Your perspective. Your kindness. Your laughter. The way you light up a room just by being in it. Gabrielle's heart was pounding. Harrison. I'm falling in love with you, he said, the words tumbling out like he'd been holding them back forever. I've been falling since the night I found you in the snow. Maybe that's too fast, maybe it's complicated by circumstance, but it's true. And if you don't feel the same, I'll accept that. But please don't leave because you think I don't need you. I do. More than I've needed anyone in years. Gabrielle stared at him, her mind racing. You saved my life. You gave me shelter when I had nothing. How do I know what I feel isn't just gratitude? I've been asking myself the same question, Harrison admitted. How do I know what I feel isn't just savior complex or loneliness? And then I realized something. It doesn't matter how it started. What matters is what it's become. He took her hand gently. When I wake up, the first thing I think about is whether you're awake yet, if you slept well. When I'm in meetings, I catch myself thinking about what you'd say, how you'd handle the situation. When something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. When something bad happens, you're the person I need beside me. That's not gratitude. That's not obligation. That's love. Tears streamed down Gabrielle's face. I'm scared, she whispered. Kevin said he loved me too. He said all the right things. And it was all lies designed to hurt me. I know, Harrison said. And I can't promise I'll never hurt you. Relationships involve risk. But I can promise that I'll never deliberately betray you. I'll never see you as less because of your wheelchair. I'll never treat you as anything other than my equal, my partner, my choice. Your family loves you already. Violet asks about you constantly. Preston wants to meet you during his spring break. They both said independently that I seem happier than I've been in years. They know why. You're not disrupting my family. You're helping complete it. Gabrielle looked into Harrison's eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity. She thought about the divine timing that brought her to this house. About how every hardship had led her to this moment. About how sometimes the worst thing that happens opens the door to something better. I love you too, she said softly. I've been fighting it because it scared me. But I do. I love your kindness, your integrity, the way you're trying so hard to be better. I love your laugh and your terrible coffee and the way you talk to Duke like he understands every word. I love that you saw me at my lowest and never once made me feel like a burden. Harrison cupped her face gently, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. So you'll stay? Not as a guest, but as... He hesitated, searching for the right words. As yours, Gabrielle finished. And you as mine. Yes, Harrison breathed. Exactly that. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. But Gabrielle met him halfway, their lips touching in a kiss that was gentle and sweet and full of promise. Duke woke up and barked, whether in approval or protest unclear, making them break apart laughing. I think he's happy for us, Gabrielle said, scratching behind Duke's ears. I think he knew before we did, Harrison said. He's been sleeping in your room for weeks. They sat together, hands linked, while the storm raged outside. Inside was warmth and love and the beginning of something neither had dared hope for. Two broken people finding healing in each other. Two lost souls discovering home. The business might have been saved by strategy and smart decisions. But Harrison's heart had been saved by something else entirely. By a woman who taught him that vulnerability wasn't weakness. That accepting help wasn't failure. That love could bloom even in the coldest season if you're brave enough to let it. 2 months into their relationship, Gabrielle noticed Duke starting to slow down again. It was subtle at first. He took longer to get up from his bed. His appetite decreased slightly. He still followed Gabrielle everywhere, but with less enthusiasm than before. Maybe he's just getting older, Harrison suggested when she mentioned it. He is 8 now. That's getting up there for a German shepherd. But Gabrielle wasn't convinced. Duke had been so vibrant, so energetic in her first weeks at the manor. This decline felt wrong somehow. She scheduled an appointment with Dr. Martinez, the veterinarian who had examined Duke previously. The exam revealed nothing conclusive. Duke's vital signs were normal. His joints showed typical age-appropriate wear but nothing concerning. Dr. Martinez ran blood work, checked for tumors, tested his thyroid. Everything came back normal. Physically he's healthy, Dr. Martinez said, perplexed. But you're right that something's off. Animals can decline mentally and emotionally just like humans. Has there been any major change in his routine recently? Gabrielle and Harrison looked at each other. The only major change was their relationship becoming romantic. They held hands now, kissed goodnight, sat closer together. They were happy, openly affectionate in ways they hadn't been before. It's us, Gabrielle said suddenly. He's confused about us. About what it means. What do you mean? Harrison asked. Gabrielle knelt beside Duke, stroking his soft fur. The dog leaned into her touch but his eyes were sad. Duke loved Rachel. She was his person. When she died he grieved. Then you grieved and he tried to take care of you. But he never really processed losing her because you never really processed losing her. I thought I had, Harrison said quietly. I thought 5 years was enough time. Time doesn't heal wounds we don't acknowledge, Gabrielle said. Duke sees us together, sees us happy, and part of him thinks he's betraying Rachel by accepting me. By loving me. He's feeling guilty. Dr. Martinez nodded slowly. That actually makes sense. Dogs are incredibly attuned to emotional dynamics. If he's carrying unresolved grief. How do we fix it? Harrison asked. Gabrielle looked up at him. We honor Rachel properly. We include her in our story instead of treating her like a closed chapter. We show Duke that loving me doesn't mean forgetting her. That evening after dinner, Gabrielle asked Harrison to show her Rachel's favorite places in the house. He led her to the greenhouse, which had been locked since Rachel's death. The space was dusty and neglected, but the structure remained beautiful. Glass walls on 3 sides, wrought iron benches, planting beds waiting for life. Rachel spent hours here, Harrison said. Growing herbs, vegetables, flowers. She said gardening connected her to something larger than herself. Even during treatment, she'd sit here and plan what she'd plant next spring. His voice broke. That spring never came. Let's bring it back to life, Gabrielle said. For her. With her memory as part of it. Over the next week, they cleaned the greenhouse together. Gabrielle researched plants that grew well in winter. Harrison ordered supplies. They worked side by side talking about Rachel the entire time. Harrison shared stories he'd never told anyone. About their first date, their wedding, the day Violet was born. About Rachel's terrible singing voice and her excellent cooking. About how she'd made him laugh even in the darkest times. I never talked about her after she died, Harrison admitted as they planted bulbs that would bloom in spring. I thought talking about her would make it hurt worse. But keeping silent just made the hurt last longer. Grief needs expression, Gabrielle said. Bottled up, it poisons everything. Released, it can transform into something beautiful. They hung a wind chime in Rachel's memory, its gentle tones filling the greenhouse with music. They placed a small plaque on one of the benches, Rachel's garden. Where love grows eternal. Duke had been watching from the doorway. As they stood back to admire their work, he walked into the greenhouse slowly. He sniffed the plaque, then lay down on the floor beneath the wind chime with a deep sigh. He understands, Gabrielle whispered. Harrison knelt beside his dog, stroking his head. It's okay, boy. We're not forgetting her. We're not replacing her. Rachel will always be part of this family. But families can grow. We can love new people without diminishing what came before. Duke's tail thumped once against the floor. That night, Gabrielle suggested they look through photo albums with Duke present. They spread pictures across the library floor, Duke in the middle. Every photo of Rachel they showed to Duke, saying her name, sharing the memory. This is Rachel at the beach, Harrison would say, and Duke would sniff the photo carefully. Remember how she threw sticks for you for hours? You loved those days. Duke whined softly, but it wasn't a sad sound. It was recognition. Memory. Permission to remember. They created a memory box together, filling it with items that had belonged to Rachel. A scarf that still held her scent. The collar Duke had worn when he was younger, which Rachel had picked out. Seed packets from plants she'd grown. Letters she'd written to Harrison during business trips. We're keeping these things sacred, Gabrielle told Duke seriously. We're honoring her. She was loved. She is loved. Nothing changes that. Over the following weeks, Duke's health improved dramatically. His appetite returned. His energy bounced back. He started playing again, bringing toys to Gabrielle and Harrison with enthusiasm. The sadness left his eyes, replaced by contentment. One morning, Gabrielle woke to find Duke sleeping peacefully at the foot of her bed, but with his head pointed toward a photo of Rachel that Harrison had placed on the dresser. The dog had found balance. He could love his new person while honoring his first person. It wasn't betrayal. It was the natural expansion of a loyal heart. Harrison noticed the change too. "You were right," he told Gabrielle. Duke needed permission to move forward. We all did. They made the greenhouse a regular gathering place. Violet loved it when she visited, saying it felt like her mother's spirit lived in the space. When Preston finally came for spring break, his first request was to see Rachel's garden. He cried when he saw the plaque, but they were healing tears. "Mom would love this," Preston said, looking around at the thriving plants. "And she would love you, Gabrielle, for taking care of Dad and Duke, for not trying to erase her." "I could never erase her," Gabrielle said. "She made the people I love who they are. I'm grateful to her." That night, all four of them, Harrison, Gabrielle, Violet, and Preston, had dinner in the greenhouse surrounded by Rachel's memory. They shared stories, laughed at old jokes, and cried together. Duke lay contentedly at Gabrielle's feet, finally at peace. Harrison watched his family, complete in a way he'd thought impossible, and felt overwhelming gratitude. Rachel had given him so much. Their children, years of happiness, a foundation of love that had survived even death. And now, through some divine plan he couldn't begin to understand, she'd sent him Gabrielle. Not to replace her, but to help him live again. "Thank you," he whispered to Rachel's memory. "For everything. For then and somehow for now." The wind chimes sang in response, a gentle agreement carried on the evening breeze. Spring arrived at Cole Manor with an explosion of color. The bulbs they'd planted in Rachel's greenhouse burst into bloom, filling the space with tulips, daffodils, and hyacinths. Outside, the grounds transformed from winter white to vibrant green. Duke's favorite activity became lying in patches of sunshine, watching Gabrielle and Harrison tend the garden together. Life had settled into a beautiful rhythm. Gabrielle continued her graphic design work from a studio Harrison had set up in the former music room. Her client base had grown steadily, and she'd started specializing in accessibility consulting, helping companies design materials that worked for people with disabilities. The work felt purposeful, using her experience to help others. Harrison's business continued its turnaround. Cole Technologies had posted its best quarter in 5 years. The board was thrilled. Harrison was calm. He'd learned to separate his worth from quarterly profits, to value time with family over another percentage point of growth. Violet visited every weekend without fail. She'd started dating someone, a fellow social worker named Thomas, and brought him to meet the family. Preston came home whenever school allowed, often bringing textbooks to study at the manor. He said the greenhouse was the most peaceful place to learn about healing. On a warm April evening, Harrison asked Gabrielle to take a walk with him through the grounds. Duke trotted beside them as they followed a path through blooming trees. "I've been thinking," Harrison said, his voice carrying a nervous edge Gabrielle hadn't heard in months. "About what?" she asked. "About us. About the future. About what comes next." Gabrielle's heart sped up, but she kept her voice steady. "What do you see coming next?" Harrison stopped at a clearing where a small gazebo overlooked a pond. Someone had decorated it with flowers and candles, which weren't yet lit. Gabrielle looked at Harrison questioningly. "Violet helped me set this up earlier," he admitted. "She's better at romantic gestures than I am." "It's beautiful," Gabrielle said, genuinely touched. Harrison took both her hands, looking down at her seriously. "4 months ago I found you in the snow. I thought I was saving you. But really you saved me. You saved my business, my relationship with my children, my relationship with Duke. Most importantly, you saved my ability to feel joy again." "Harrison." Gabrielle started, but he gently squeezed her hands. "Let me finish. Please." He took a shaky breath. "I loved Rachel. I'll always love her. But I've learned that the heart has infinite capacity. Loving you doesn't diminish what I felt for her. It adds to my life, expands it, makes me better." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. Gabrielle's breath caught. "You've taught me about acceptance," Harrison continued. "About receiving help without shame. About letting people see your vulnerability. So I'm practicing what you've taught me. I'm being vulnerable. I'm asking for help. For partnership. For forever." He opened the box to reveal a ring. Not ostentatious but beautiful. A sapphire surrounded by small diamonds, the band engraved with tiny flowers. Gabrielle Johnson, would you marry me? Would you make this house our home, this family our family? Would you let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much you mean to me? Tears streamed down Gabrielle's face. She looked at this man who had stopped for her in the snow, who had given her shelter without hesitation, who had never once made her feel less because of her wheelchair, who had opened his home, his heart, his family to her. Yes, she said through tears. Yes, absolutely yes. Harrison slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her close, kissing her deeply. Duke barked excitedly, running in circles around them. From behind the trees, Violet and Preston emerged, cheering and clapping. You were hiding there the whole time? Gabrielle laughed. We wanted to see Dad actually do something romantic without overthinking it to death, Violet said, hugging Gabrielle tightly. Welcome to the family. Officially. Preston hugged her next. I knew Dad would figure it out eventually. You're perfect for him. For all of us. They spent the evening in the gazebo as the sun set. Mrs. Patterson appeared with champagne and food, having been in on the surprise. They toasted to new beginnings, to love found in unexpected places, to family both chosen and born. As darkness fell, Harrison lit the candles. In their warm glow, surrounded by people she loved and who loved her back, Gabrielle felt complete in a way she'd never experienced. Not complete because a man had chosen her, but complete because she'd found where she belonged. I want to tell you something, Harrison said later, when they had a moment alone. The day I found you, I'd been to a meeting about possibly selling the company. Walking away from my father's legacy because I couldn't figure out how to save it. I was driving home thinking about my life, about how empty everything felt. And then I saw you. He touched her face gently. Finding you changed everything. It made me want to fight again. To try. To believe in divine timing and second chances. You gave me my life back, Gabrielle. I want to spend the rest of it making sure you know how much that means. You already do, Gabrielle said. Every day. In every kindness. Every conversation. Every moment you choose me, choose us. I know. They kissed again as Duke settled at their feet with a contented sigh. The moon rose over the pond, reflecting silver on the water. The night air carried the scent of flowers from Rachel's greenhouse, a blessing on this new chapter. Gabrielle thought about the woman in the wedding dress, freezing in the snow just 4 months ago. That woman had lost everything. Had been betrayed, abandoned, left for dead. But that devastation had led her here. To this man, this family, this love that felt destined. Sometimes the worst day of your life is actually the doorway to the best chapter of your life. You just have to be brave enough to walk through it. And Gabrielle had been brave. She'd accepted help when pride said to refuse. She'd stayed when fear said to leave. She'd loved when past hurt said to guard her heart. And every brave choice had led her here, to this moment, to this man, to this life. Thank you, she whispered to the universe, to divine timing, to whatever force had led Harrison down that particular road on that particular day. Thank you for seeing what I needed even when I didn't know myself. The wind chime in the greenhouse sang softly in response. Rachel's blessing carried on the spring breeze. The engagement brought a flurry of happy activity to Cole Manor. Wedding planning began immediately, with Violet enthusiastically taking charge. This time, Gabrielle would have a real wedding surrounded by people who genuinely loved her. No hired actors. No lies. Just family and joy. They set the date for late June, giving them 2 months to prepare. The ceremony would be in Rachel's greenhouse, surrounded by the blooming life they'd created together. Preston would walk Gabrielle down the aisle. Violet would be maid of honor. Duke would have a special role carrying the rings naturally. Cole Technologies continued thriving under its new direction. Harrison had hired additional staff to handle the increased premium orders, bringing back some of the people they'd initially laid off into better-suited positions. The company culture transformed from desperate to confident. Employees felt the difference. Gabrielle's consulting work had expanded beyond her initial plans. She'd started speaking at conferences about accessibility in design, sharing her insights about creating products and spaces that served everyone. Her voice carried weight because she spoke from experience, not theory. 6 weeks before the wedding, the detective who'd taken Gabrielle's report about Kevin called requesting a meeting. He arrived at the manor on a sunny May afternoon, his expression serious. I have news, Detective Rodriguez said after accepting Mrs. Patterson's offer of coffee. We found Kevin Martinez. His real name is Kevin Sawyer. And you're not his only victim. Gabrielle felt Harrison's hand find hers under the table. How many? She asked quietly. At least 6 that we can prove, Detective Rodriguez said. His pattern was consistent. Find vulnerable women online, usually with some kind of disability or recent trauma. Build a relationship. Get access to their finances. Then disappear after staging some kind of humiliating exit. That's horrible, Harrison said, his jaw tight. It is. But here's where your case becomes crucial. Detective Rodriguez pulled out a folder. Sawyer's scheme went beyond theft. He was using the women's identities to run a larger fraud operation. Opening credit cards in their names, taking out loans, even creating shell companies. The women he targeted would have been held financially and legally responsible. Gabrielle's chest tightened. You're saying I would have been implicated in serious financial crimes? Detective Rodriguez confirmed. If you had married him, you would have been his legal spouse. That connection would have made it nearly impossible for you to prove you weren't involved. Several of his other victims are currently under investigation themselves, trying to clear their names. The room fell silent. Harrison looked pale. You're telling us that Kevin leaving Gabrielle at the altar actually saved her from prison? Almost certainly, Detective Rodriguez said. We found notes in Sawyer's apartment. He tracks his targets carefully. Your disability was supposed to make you easier to manipulate, more dependent on him. But when he saw you in person, something changed. We think he realized you were too smart, too independent. That you'd figure out what he was doing eventually. So he ran, Gabrielle said. He ran. Abandoning you was cruel, but in a twisted way, it was his version of mercy. He could have gone through with the wedding and destroyed your life. Instead, he left you with a broken heart and stolen savings. Both of which are recoverable. A criminal record wouldn't be. Gabrielle sat back, trying to process this information. All this time, I thought being left there was the worst thing that could happen. But it actually saved me. Divine intervention, Harrison said quietly. You were saved from something so much worse. Detective Rodriguez nodded. We'll need you to testify when we bring Sawyer to trial. He's facing multiple felony charges. With your testimony and the other victims, we're confident about conviction. I'll testify, Gabrielle said firmly. If it helps stop him from hurting anyone else, I'll do whatever you need. After Detective Rodriguez left, Gabrielle and Harrison sat in stunned silence. Duke, sensing their emotional state, pushed his head into Gabrielle's lap comfortingly. I need to tell you something, Harrison finally said. Something I've never told anyone. Gabrielle looked at him, seeing vulnerability in his expression. The day I found you, I almost didn't take that road, Harrison admitted. I started to turn toward my usual route. But something made me reconsider. A feeling I couldn't explain. Like someone was guiding me to go a different way. Divine timing, Gabrielle said. More than that. I remember thinking about Rachel as I drove. Asking her, wherever she was, to give me a sign that I should keep trying. That life was worth living. 5 minutes later, I saw you. Harrison's eyes filled with tears. She answered me. She sent me to you. Not randomly but specifically. Because you needed saving and I needed purpose. And if you hadn't found me when you did. Gabrielle couldn't finish the sentence. But I did. And Kevin abandoned you before he could trap you in his scheme. And every piece had to happen exactly when it happened or the whole thing falls apart. They sat holding hands, contemplating the intricate timing that had saved both their lives. If Harrison had driven his usual route. If Kevin hadn't gotten scared and left. If the snowstorm had been lighter or heavier. Any single change and they never would have met. It's too perfect to be accident, Gabrielle said. Too precise. I know. That evening they hosted a family dinner. Violet and Preston came along with Mrs. Patterson and her husband. Gabrielle shared what Detective Rodriguez had revealed. The reactions ranged from shock to fury to amazement at the implications. You were literally saved by being abandoned, Violet said, shaking her head. That's incredible. Mom always said that what looks like disaster is sometimes disguise, Preston added. She'd say this whole thing proved that you can't judge a situation until you see where it leads. Harrison raised his glass. To divine timing. To being found when we're lost. To the people and circumstances that save us even when we don't know we need saving. To family, Gabrielle added. The one you're born into and the one you find. They all drank to that. As the party continued, Gabrielle found a moment alone in Rachel's greenhouse. She stood looking at the plaque they'd installed, thinking about the woman who had never met but who had shaped her life anyway. Thank you, she said aloud. For raising such a good man. For loving him so well that he learned how to love deeply. for whatever you did to guide him to me that day. I promise I'll take care of him. I'll honor your memory. And I'll never take for granted the gift you've given me." The wind chimes sang softly, a gentle response. Harrison appeared in the doorway. "Talking to Rachel?" "Thanking her," Gabrielle corrected. "For you. For all of this." He joined her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "I do that too sometimes. Thank her. Tell her about you. About how happy I am." "You think she knows?" Gabrielle asked. "I think she was probably involved in arranging it," Harrison said. "Rachel never did anything halfway. If she was going to send me someone, it would be someone perfect." 6 weeks later, on a perfect June afternoon, they married in Rachel's greenhouse. The space was packed with family and friends. Real people who loved them. Violet stood beside Gabrielle as maid of honor, crying happy tears. Preston walked Gabrielle down the aisle, proud and protective. Duke, wearing a bow tie, carried the rings with dignity. When he delivered them, he sat between the bride and groom, as if claiming his position in this new family structure. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They wrote their own vows. Harrison promised to see Gabrielle as his equal in all things, to never let her disability define their relationship, to choose her every day for the rest of his life. Gabrielle promised to accept his love without shame, to trust his intentions, to build a life together that honored both their pasts and their future. When they kissed as husband and wife, the entire room erupted in cheers. Outside, the sun broke through clouds that had threatened rain all morning, sending golden light streaming through the greenhouse glass. At the reception held on the manor grounds, Detective Rodriguez appeared briefly. He'd been invited, being part of their story whether they liked it or not. He brought news. Kevin Sawyer had been sentenced to 15 years for fraud. Gabrielle's testimony had been crucial. "You helped get justice for a lot of people," Detective Rodriguez told her. "You should be proud." "I'm just grateful," Gabrielle said. "Grateful it ended the way it did. That I'm here instead of where I could have been." As evening fell, Harrison and Gabrielle took a moment alone by the pond where he'd proposed. Duke lay at their feet, content in the warm air. "Are you happy?" Harrison asked. "Deliriously," Gabrielle said. "Are you?" "More than I knew was possible." Harrison pulled her close. "You know what the best part is? This is just the beginning. We get the rest of our lives to be this happy." Gabrielle leaned her head on his shoulder, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. She thought about the woman in the wedding dress, freezing in the snow. About how lost and broken she'd been. About how certain she'd been that her life was over. That woman had no idea that her actual life was just beginning. That losing everything would lead to gaining so much more. That divine hands were arranging pieces she couldn't see into a pattern she couldn't imagine. "I want to help other people," Gabrielle said suddenly. "People like I was. Broken and lost and thinking it's the end." "How?" Harrison asked. "I don't know yet. But there has to be a way to share this message. That your worst day might be leading you to your best life. That accepting help isn't weakness. That love can find you even when you're not looking for it." Harrison smiled. "We'll figure it out together. Whatever you want to do, however you want to help people, I'm with you." "Partners?" Gabrielle said. "In everything," Harrison agreed. From the reception area they heard music starting. Their first dance as husband and wife. They made their way back, joining family and friends in celebration. As Gabrielle danced in her wheelchair, Harrison's hands in hers, she felt overwhelmingly grateful. For divine timing. For snowstorms and wrong turns and chance meetings that weren't chance at all. For a man who had stopped to help. For a family who had opened their hearts. For a dog who had loved her immediately. Most of all, she was grateful for grace. For the mysterious force that had turned devastation into blessing, rejection into protection, ending into beginning. Sometimes you have to be broken open before light can get in. Sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is actually a divine rescue operation you're too hurt to recognize. Gabrielle recognized it now. All of it. Every painful piece had been necessary to bring her here, to this moment, to this man, to this life. And it was worth it. Every frozen moment in the snow, every tear, every fear had been worth it to arrive at this perfect joy. The music played. The family danced. Duke barked his happiness to the stars. And in Rachel's greenhouse, the wind chimes sang its approval, blessing carried on the gentle summer breeze. As you've followed this incredible journey, have you recognized the divine timing in your own life? The moments that seemed like disasters but led you to exactly where you needed to be? Share your story in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe so you never miss another tale of hope, love, and second chances. Your support means everything and helps us continue sharing these powerful stories.